So if you're still waiting to be chosen, you're not being patient. You're being trained. And yes, I know that sentence just made your nervous system sit up really and freak out. But here's the truth. The truth is waiting doesn't feel like a problem, right? Waiting feels like being responsible. Waiting feels like being smart. Waiting feels like I'm not going to embarrass myself, right? But here's what it actually is. Waiting is how brilliant people disappear. So if you're over 40 or 50 and you've started to feel like your voice is optional, like the room doesn't quite tilt toward the way you want it to be or the way it used to be, like you're watching younger people take up space with the confidence of, somebody who's really mediocre on their podcast, then this episode is for you. Because today we're going to talk about the invisible habit that makes you feel behind. It makes you feel that you're not there, even though you're wildly capable of it. So you keep waiting to be chosen. Ever feel like life passed you by while you were being responsible? Like everyone else got a head start on success, on happiness or purpose, and now you're just trying not to fall asleep during your own life. Well, welcome to Too Late My Ass. This is the podcast for anyone who's ever thought it was too late. Too late to dream again, to build again, or begin again. So spoiler alert, it's not. I'm Faye Chappell, and I'm here to help you burn the rule book, rewrite the script, and become the main character in your next chapter. So whether you're 39, 49, 59, or 79, this isn't about getting your groove back. It's about finally giving yourself permission to freaking exist exactly as you are. So hit subscribe, tell that inner critic to take several seats, and let's make this your comeback era, because too late, my ass. I'm going to tell you something that might sting, but it's really for the best. It's going to kind of sting, yeah, but like when you put on jeans that actually fit and you realize that you've been living in denial pants, right? No one is coming. No one is coming to hand you the microphone. No one is coming to officially validate your second act. And no one is coming to appoint you ready. You choose you. And your nervous system has to learn how to tolerate that, okay? So let me tell you about the moment that I realized that waiting was costing me truly my life. It was not dramatic. There's no fainting, no cinematic crying in the shower. It was just a moment so ordinary that it was almost insulting. So as most of you know, I was in corporate forever, and I was in a meeting, and one of those meetings where everyone talks like they're trying not to startle a deer, right? So we're discussing something that I had years of experience in, literally years. And I thought a clean thought, a useful thought, the kind of thought that, you get paid for. And I watched myself do nothing, right? I watched myself do that thing, right? You know that thing that you waited for that opening, right? You're waiting for that right moment. You're waiting for somebody to ask. You're waiting for permission in the form of a conversational gap, so to speak. And while I was waiting, what happened? Well, someone else who is sweet and confident and very average, they spoke. And they said some version of exactly my point, but it was simpler, it was less precise, it was more audition-y kind of, right? And everyone nodded like they just heard the discovery of gravity, right? And I felt something in my body that I'm going to name for you, right? Because naming is power. So I want to call it reinvention rage, not at them, not even at the room, but at myself. Because what I realized was I was behaving like my voice was a guest, and guests don't rearrange the furniture, right? Guests wait to be invited. And in midlife, and especially for women, guest energy is truly a slow death. So maybe your version of this isn't a boardroom, and maybe it's your family, or it's your creative dream, or maybe it's your body, maybe it's your dating life or your visibility online. But I promise you this, you have a place, you still shrink, right? And you don't call it shrinking, you call it being reasonable. You call it timing, you call it humility, you call it, I'm just not ready yet. And I'm not here to truly shame you on that. I'm here to tell you the truth that your brain has been too polite to admit to yourself. Waiting is a nervous system strategy. It's not a personality trait. Think about that. It's a nervous system strategy. Does that make sense to you guys? Because the identity that you've lived in for decades, it has a job, right? And the job is to keep you safe inside what you already know how to be. And being chosen is safe because if someone else chooses you, you don't have to risk being seen without a guarantee, basically, right? So if someone else invites you, for example, you don't have to feel that raw exposure of initiating it, right? Or if someone else validates you, right? They validate. You don't have to hold your own authority in your own hands. And if your nervous system, bless it, loves outsourcing risks, well, it loves it. Yeah, it does. But it comes with a cost. The cost is you become optional. I don't mean optional in your heart. I mean optional in your identity signal, right? We've been talking about that a lot because identity isn't what you believe about yourself. Identity is what you repeatedly practice as true. That's what's happening. So if you repeatedly practice waiting, your brain starts filing you under not the person who leads, the person who waits. And this is where that whole midlife invisibility syndrome creeps in, right? Because you got older, right? And it's not because you got older. It's because you got quieter. Not because you have less value. It's because you keep broadcasting, I'll go last, right? And the world is incredibly obedient to that. So if you've been signaling, I'm last, it will say, perfect. We'll just treat you like background noise. And then you'll think, see, I knew it. I'm irrelevant. No, that's not how it works. You are unclaimed. It's a different thing altogether, right? So let's get scientific for a second without turning this into a TED Talk where everyone smiles too much. Your brain is a prediction machine. So it's constantly scanning what's safe, what's risky, what gets me connection, what gets me rejected, what keeps me in the tribe, in the community. And here's the part that nobody told you. Visibility is processed as risk, right? So unless your nervous system has evidence that it's safe, then it's going to say not safe, like nothing bad will ever happen, right? So safe is like you can survive the feeling of being seen. And if you spent years learning that being seen leads to any of these, whether it's judgment or conflict or being labeled too much or being ignored or being punished, being sexualized, being minimized, being misunderstood, then your system learns that and it says, stay quiet, stay useful, stay liked. That becomes your nervous system contract. And then midlife happens, right? And something shifts, not because you got weak, because you got wise. Midlife brings second act authority, right? The part of you that has pattern recognition, the part of you that developed that bullshit meter. You know how that happened overnight? One day you were like, I get this. That part of you that can really smell manipulation before the sentence is even really comes out of somebody's mouth. So your inner authority starts waking up, but your nervous system is still running the same old contract. Does that make sense? So that creates this kind of identity incongruence, right? Humans do not resist change. They resist identity incongruence. Does that make sense? Because incongruence feels like danger. Your brain hates being a person who wants two conflicting things. They want to be seen, right? But being seen is unsafe. How many of you are there? I bet you many people who listen to this podcast are thinking, I would love to do a podcast. I would love to share my knowledge. You want to be seen, you want to be heard, but deep down in what you've trained your system to understand is your system is saying, okay, but being seen is unsafe, right? So it resolves the conflict by choosing the safer option, right? It chooses shrinking, it chooses waiting, it chooses I'll do it later. And this is identity drag, essentially. Identity drag is that invisible weight of roles and expectations that pull you backwards, even though you try to evolve. You want the podcast, you want the promotion, you want the relationship, you want the reinvention. But if your identity has been trained to really stay chosen, then you will sabotage those parts of your life that require you to choose yourself first. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you wait to be chosen, you're not just avoiding risk, you're avoiding prediction error, basically, right? So think about it. Like a prediction error is when your brain expects one thing and reality delivers another. It's one of the primary mechanisms of learning. So if your brain expects that speaking up will lead to rejection and you speak up and you're fine, that creates this prediction error and the brain updates. But if you never speak up, the brain never gets the data. So it keeps to that old belief, right? Which means that your I'm not ready is often the truth. It goes unchallenged, that prediction, right? So this is why confidence is not the solution. Confidence is a mood. Evidence is really a neurobiological update. You don't need to feel ready. You need to create that micro evidence that you can tolerate being seen. And that will lead to your update. So I want to name something gently. If you've been waiting, it's not because you're lazy. It's because your nervous system is trying to keep your identity coherent, right? But coherence isn't the same as truth. Coherence is just being familiar. And midlife is familiarity starts, it really feels like a cage. That being familiar starts feeling like a cage, right? Because you're just doing the same thing that you've always done and you are not being chosen. Again, you have to choose yourself. So let's build your second act like you're not playing around. Okay. You keep coming back and listening to me because you know you're ready. I'm telling you the same thing every week. You just need to start doing things differently. So this is the stop waiting to be chosen protocol. Okay. I'm going to give you 5 moves. They're not affirmations, right? They're 5 identity rewrites, basically. So I want you to name where you are still auditioning in a sense. So auditioning sounds like, this might be a dumb question, or I'm probably wrong, but, or here's my 2 cents, or how about sorry to bother you, or I don't know if anyone cares, but that's not politeness. That's just kind of like a self-erasure with manners, right? Your brain thinks it's decreasing risk, but what's actually broadcasting is, I don't trust my own authority, and people follow that signal. So here's your first assignment. Today, notice every time you pre-shrink your sentence. So instead of shaming yourself, just say, oh, that's my old identity trying to be chosen, okay? And replace that permission with position. So permission is external and position is internal, right? Permission says, when they approve, I'll act. Position says, this is who I am. Approval is optional. So I want you to practice one sentence. I want you to say it out loud, even if you hate me for 5 seconds. You're going to say the following. You ready? I'm not waiting to be picked. I'm positioning myself to be inevitable. Think about that. I'm not waiting to be picked. I'm positioning myself to be inevitable. That sentence makes some people feel thrilled and it makes some people feel nauseous. and both are information, okay? So I want you to really create those micro evidences so that you can understand where you're going. Your nervous system does not need a giant rebrand. It needs just a series of small, survivable visibility moments. Everything we do at Too Late is about taking small little actions that build on each other. So this is how you do an identity update. So ask the question in the meeting without hedging. Just ask the question. Don't say it in my opinion, or I don't know, or this might be useful, or post that thought online without apologizing. Don't you hate when you're online and you see people apologizing for what they think? When they say, I'm sorry, this is going to bother you, but no, just say what you want, or send that pitch without perfecting it to death, right? How many times can you absolutely read that email over and over again before you hit send? Just send it. Or wear that thing that makes you feel like you instead of what you think you're supposed to wear, right? And maybe speak first once a day, or just once a meeting, or once in a conversation. Speak first. Visibility is really a muscle. So I need you to stop asking it to like deadlift when you haven't even trained, right? You need small reps. You need to be consistent. You need to understand to do those little tiny moves. And you want to really install like an identity anchor. An identity anchor is like a repeated behavior that proves to your brain, this is who I am now. So pick an anchor this week. Do a no disclaimer rule. So speak without shrinking your sentences. Or do a first mover rule where you initiate one thing per day. Or do a claim rule where you state one desire without explaining it to anyone. It doesn't matter what you want. You can just say, this is what I'm going to do. And yes, you probably feel a little weird, because weird is the nervous system's way of saying, this is new. New is not bad. New is data, right? So think of everything you do as new. Just if you remember one thing from this entire podcast, if you do something new, your brain gets that new data and it can update. Okay. And we all know that when we're on our laptops or on our phones, they regularly update. And what happens when they update? It gets better. And I want you to do the same thing. I want you to get better. I want you to stop negotiating with your old self. This is the part where I'm going to be a little bit ruthless, but your old identity is going to try to bargain with you. It's going to say, let's just wait until we've lost 10 pounds, or let's just wait until the kids are older, or we have more clarity, or we feel confident, or let's just wait until somebody notices. So you're going to respond with one sentence. I'm not waiting. I'm building. I'm not waiting. I'm building. I'm giving my brain data. I want to update, right? Because the second act isn't something you receive. It's something you construct, and you construct it with behavior. So I want to give you a live coaching moment. Pretend I'm looking directly in the face, okay? And if you keep waiting to be chosen, you teach the world how optional you are. That's not an insult. That's neuroscience. The brain builds identity from repetition. So today, you do one thing that a chosen person does not do. A chosen person waits for the approval. A self-chosen person moves. So pick your move. Do it today before the end of the day. And when your nervous system freaks out, because it might, you're going to say, thank you for trying to protect me. We're safe. We're expanding. We're updating the data for my brain, and it's going to work. Okay. So let me close with something I want you to write down. Midlife is not when you prove you're worthy. Midlife is when you stop outsourcing authority. You are not too old. You're too seasoned to tolerate that wrong life. And if you've been feeling invisible, I want you to hear me. Invisibility is not a sentence. It's a signal, and you can change that signal, not by begging, not by performing, not by branding your way into personhood, by choosing yourself in small, consistent, nervous system safe ways. So this week, stop waiting to be chosen. Choose you, then act like it. So if you want a place where we integrate all this, where we regulate, we reflect and install that identity anchor, then come with me. You can join our inner circle, our rebellion room. That's our membership site, or you can join me on Sunday for the Sunday morning ritual as well. All the links are below. Please join us when you can. We would love to see you, and we want to see the real you, because too late, my ass. Thanks for listening to Too Late My Ass. If this episode made you feel seen or heard or a little more ready to take your damn life back, then go ahead and hit that follow button. If you want to go deeper, grab your free comeback kit at toolatemyass.com and join the Act 2 Insiders list for weekly tools, community, and reminders that your story is far from over. Remember, you're not done. You're just getting started. Too Late My Ass, produced by the City Media Group.